Welcome back to Preparing for Online Delivery. We are continuing the discussion around facilitation by talking about different ways to deliver content in an online environment.
Thanks, Bree. I can get started, and then my colleagues will also jump in. So one of the recommendations we're providing to instructors is to not rely so much on synchronous sessions. Instead, use more asynchronous tools to engage with their students. However, one of the questions we get constantly asked is do we uh, how do we facilitate the content to them? How do we deliver the content to our students? And there are some strategies we can use to, to still provide our students with the knowledge we want them to acquire during our courses. The first way in which we can do that is by pre-recording our lectures. So for instance, you can do a narrated PowerPoint. You can do a video exactly like the one we are creating right now, where we are using Google Meet to record a conversation. And all we are doing here is chunking up the content that we want our students to get access to, and then condensing them into mini lectures, to videos of around 10 to 15 minutes in length, so that the students can still access them at their own pace. And the reason for that is there's no difference between us doing this delivery of information uh, in a recorded fashion as opposed to a synchronous session in a Google Meet real-time session. So we're just taking advantage of the technology to provide that information to our students. When you're creating a video in a pre-recorded fashion, it might be helpful for you to create a script of the main points you want to address, and that will help you maintain that video content. Otherwise, it can become quite easy to expand on topics, talk about tangential aspects of the point, and then when you notice, you have a 45-minute recording that initially planned for 10 minutes. So just having that script can be helpful for you as well. If you have visuals available, also might be a good idea to use them. For instance, if you have PowerPoints that you normally use in your classes, you can also include those PowerPoints in these videos. Again, if you're using Google Meet, you can easily share your screen and then provide your students access to that visual that you are referring them to. You can also check some other tips and tricks about presenting for the camera through other videos that we created, especially a workshop that Ian Borg and Caleb Zorn from our academic and media group had put together, just talking about tips and strategies that you can use when you are recording those videos. I don't know if Patty and John have anything else in terms of pre-recorded lectures that they want to share with us.
Yeah, I would like to speak to this idea of mini lectures and micro lectures. And the reason why we do this is that we want students to have small digestible chunks of content. But a little more than that is that we actually want to have a little bit of instruction and then a lot of activity. So I would say if you're designing mini lectures and micro lectures, just don't have it to relay content, but the intent of these things are to actually to front end the information so students can now engage something. So in your planning and how you want to structure that, think about what little bit of knowledge do they need to run through this activity. So when you are preparing mini lectures and micro lectures, think about that second piece, which actually allows for that flow, because it's not, we do not want to promote this whole passive idea, this whole old transmission model of teaching where, I talk and you listen. So what we need to do is take advantage of these opportunities where I'm going to do a bit of talking and now you're going to be doing. And it's so critical in the asynchronous space and in the synchronous space that students are actually active and are doing. So always keep that top of mind, I think, as you prepare your lectures and your content and how you put it out there to your students.
And just a kind of a reminder of some of the more practical pieces around that. With everybody working, doing things online, there's a new phrase has come out called Zoom fatigue. And even though we don't use Zoom here at Mount Royal, the concept is the same. And one of the benefits of doing the smaller lectures, in addition to creating space for activity between those, it's allowing students to kind of take a break from the screen. They don't have to sit in front of the screen and watch an hour-long lecture and kind of get burnt out. And their attention span, really, literature shows that when it comes to video content for lectures, the attention span kind of peaks around 6 minutes. So when you're going over 10 minutes, you're going to be losing them. And of course, there are exceptions to every rule. I'm sure many of you have enjoyed TED Talks. They're a different animal than what we're talking about with mini lectures and micro lectures. So keeping those pre-recorded pieces in smaller chunks just benefits everyone. When you're creating them, it allows you to kind of get something done quickly and not worry about making mistakes down the road and kind of messing up the whole rhythm of things. But it gives your students nice, manageable pieces, and natural breaks where they can step away from the computer. So there are lots of reasons for doing the mini lectures, and that format gives them a little bit more energy for being engaged, kind of bringing things back to our topic of engagement and facilitating here.
Thanks, Patty and John. And I think a final comment in terms of video recordings is also be mindful of what they are and what our own limitations are in terms of creating these. Being mindful that, as you probably are experiencing right now, watching this video that we pre-recorded, talking hands are not necessarily engaging. They're not the most engageful way in which you can deliver information. However, that's what we have at our disposal. So also be mindful in terms of limiting that amount. We don't want to kill our students by recording and giving them 3-hour talking head kind of lectures at them. Like they're better use of time both on our end and their own end. And the other piece is, unfortunately, we don't have the resources to make this a very polished production. We're not Hollywood. So be mindful of that when you're creating your videos. Can also first diminish your expectations, but also your anxieties. Even in putting together these very videos, we did talk about some strategies, and then we decided, no, let's keep it low level in the same way as faculty members will have access to, with no transitions, no special effects, just the real tools that you can have available to you so that you can have an experience. So some things to consider when you are creating your videos. John, over to you.
Yeah, and I believe in the literature, I came across some writings where the less polished your video is, the more memorable it is to your student. So keep that in mind. You can have just a wonderful, kind of what I'm doing right now. Hopefully, just talking to my camera and being me, and hopefully that'll be memorable, and that would stick with your students. So don't fear if you don't have a Hollywood production going on.
Absolutely. So, but we're talking about videos as one way of delivering content. That is not the only way in which you can deliver content in an online environment. There are some other strategies you can use. The first one can also be curating online resources. So you can find that somebody else might have already recorded a video on the topic you are talking about. Then your job is simply to locate that file and link it to your Blackboard shell and let your students know that that is the content of the week. You may also want to find websites or other digital files that can support that knowledge that you want your students to acquire. And here is an opportunity that you have in terms of engaging your subject librarian and asking that specialist just to have a look in terms of other resources that you might want to tap, maybe some open educational resources that you can also include in your course. Always also be mindful of the copyright implications of that. So be sure that you also visit the recommendations and fulfill them, but take opportunity of those other resources that are available out there to support our courses. And finally,
just sorry to interrupt. Again, that unpolished piece here, but a reminder to folks that on the pod website we do have links out to the page the library created around open educational resources. There's links to finding for MRU faculty finding their subject librarian, and there are links to the MRU copyright page, or sorry, copyright website that has information about copyright in the remote delivery context, and tons of copyright friendly resources. So definitely check out those links available through the pod website.
Thanks, Patty. And again, just to conclude this video on ways in which you can deliver information. Of course, the final one is through synchronous sessions, through real-time Google Meet sessions. Although we do encourage you to think about other alternatives first. And only if those other alternatives don't work for you, then you consider those synchronous sessions as a way of delivering information. And even then, be really mindful about some of the challenges that synchronous sessions can pose to students in terms of accessibility, in terms of equity, and in terms of attention span as well. So ensure that you have those points. And one of the strategies some instructors are using, and actually to combine those two synchronous and asynchronous strategies to deliver content, is they're pre-recording their lecture piece. So let's say they're creating 2 or 3 mini lectures totaling 30 minutes. And then asking their students to watch those pre-recordings during the time of the class. So let's say if my class is Monday between 10 and 11:20, I'll have my students watching those videos between 10 and 10:30. And then I will schedule a synchronous class starting at 10:30. And that will give my students opportunity to watch the videos. And then during the synchronous time, I'll pose some questions. We will have a discussion about the content that was delivered. That's one of the many strategies we can use just to combine those two strategies, but also leveraging what they are best for. So that's one of the examples.
That wraps up this video on delivering your content online. Thanks again to John, Luciano, and Patty. Be sure to join us in the next video where we discuss creating community when delivering your course online. Thanks for watching.